This is Caring for Kids on News Talk 760 WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. And here's your host, President and CEO of the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation, Larry Burns.
Hello and welcome everyone to Caring for Kids. Tonight we have a great show. This episode of Caring for Kids actually takes place at the 2018 Mackinac Policy Conference on the fabulous Mackinac Island, as leaders in business, government, and nonprofits gathered to discuss the state's pressing issues surrounding state policy, child health, and wellness in your community. So joining us tonight is Senator Debbie Stabenow. We have Doug Maibach, Vice President of Barton Mallow Company, and he's Chairman of the Barton Mallow Enterprises. And to round out this great list of guests, we have Donna Brown, who's President and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. It's all coming up next, right here on Caring for Kids, on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Senator Debbie Stabenow is a Michigan native born in Gladwin and raised in Clare, Michigan. She attended Michigan State University, where she received both her master's and bachelor's degrees in social work. Senator Stabenow is a nationally recognized leader on health care and a ranking member of the Senate Health Subcommittee on the Senate and the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Stabenow has been elected to the Michigan House of Representatives, State Senate, U.S. Congress, and then in 2000, Senator Stabenow made history by becoming the first woman from the state of Michigan elected to the United States Senate. Senator, it's an honor to have you out on Caring for Kids.
It's great to be with you.
We're on Mackinac. We're at the policy conference.
That's right.
All sorts of things going on, and I know that you're extremely busy, so thank you for
my pleasure.
Taking the time.
And we look out at this beautiful water that we call the Great Lakes.
So we have a freighter going by and the ferry going by, so it's delightful. So let me ask you a few questions about being on the Committee of Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry.
Right.
What is it about that interest that led you to become such a strong champion for better child nutrition?
Well, first of all, one of the most important issues for children growing up is to have healthy food, to be able to, and not only healthy food, but access to food. We have 1 out of 6 children in Michigan that don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And so you can't grow up in a healthy way. You can't focus in school if you're hungry. This is a health issue as well as well-being. And so I've been, as the lead on agriculture, nutrition, and forestry, very focused on making sure that children are getting healthy meals at school. Also in the summer, we have a lot of children that their only meals are breakfast and lunch at school, and then in the summer, what do? And so we have a very extensive program where children at least get one healthy meal in the summer. During the summer. Yep. And we also, one of the things that I'm very proud of is expanding the school gardens as well as community gardens. And we have kids are more likely to eat some vegetables or fruit if they actually help grow them. So, that's happening as well. And kids are getting more interested in that. And there's also great, not only nutrition curriculum, but math and science curriculum that goes along with actually having school gardens, and so it's been a very big success. Yeah, that's awesome. And nutrition and wellness is one of our Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation priority areas. So this fits exactly into where we're going. We're actually, since we're more of a community-based foundation now, because of the Children's Hospital being a for-profit organization, we're really focusing on ways to keep kids out of the hospital. And nutrition and wellness is clearly one of our priorities. We just made a grant to Gleaners, and we're going to be providing a major grant that provides milk to kids. Wonderful. And so, you can't store milk like they can store cereal and other things. So this is going to be
Something we're very excited about.
That is really terrific. That reminds me of when we first heard about what happened in Flint and lead poisoning, the horrific situation there. I talked with Dr. Mona, very involved in bringing this to light, and asked her for children what mitigates lead in their bodies, and she said good nutrition, including milk. Was very important. And so I was very proud of the fact that the Michigan milk producers reached out and gave donations. They were the first agricultural group to give donations in Flint.
Good.
And so it was great.
It's another reason why the state of Michigan is a wonderful place to live.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yes, we're talking to Senator Debbie Stabenow, and we're talking about Quality Care for Moms and Babies Act. That improves maternity care for women. It's an initiative that you sponsored. Tell us more about that, because we're also very dedicated to some really good prenatal care for particularly underserved moms.
Absolutely. One of the things that is very concerning to me is the fact that we don't have quality standards in Medicaid. So low-income moms that are getting their health care through Medicaid don't have the same quality standards for prenatal care, maternity care, and so on that we do for other systems. And so I've been working very hard through the Moms and Babies Act to put in quality standards as well as information and so on, so that children that are being born into situations where low-income moms that are already struggling can know at least they're going to have the quality standards to make sure that their health and their baby's health will be maximized.
Yeah, and we just know that if the baby doesn't get off to a good start, then it's a downhill.
Yep. Yeah, and that involves, as you know, prenatal care and right on through.
Right. And nutrition of the mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you. Those are really important things to us and to, more importantly, to kids and their families. Now, you're very familiar with the CHIP program.
Yes.
And most people aren't familiar with what that means. I know that you are. It's the Children's Health Insurance Program. Known as CHIP. And so how is that program working in your opinion?
Well, this is very important. We call it My Child in Michigan. And we have 100,000 children that get their health care through this insurance system. And it's set up for moms and dads that are working in jobs that don't provide health care. And so it's a way for them to be able to purchase very inexpensively health care for their children. Yes, right. And this is very important. It's been extremely successful. Normally, CHIP is something that is authorized for 1 or 2 years at a time, the funding of it. I was able to work with the chairman of the committee, Senator Orrin Hatch. We were able to actually get a 10-year extension.
10 years.
Never happened before.
Wow.
So we were able to get that done. And so we know we have confidence in the state who administers the program can have confidence. And most importantly, families can have confidence that we will have this for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and we fund several organizations that are involved with CHIP and on some nutrition and wellness and exercise and things of that nature as well. So thank you for that hard work in Washington to do that for 10 years. Now, having children of your own, what do you see as being some of the biggest threats to child health, wellness? We read about things all the time, but you're at it as a mom, as a leader in Michigan, as a leader in Washington. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's several things. I think it first starts with what we were talking about with good nutrition from the very, very beginning, and then making sure that children have access to healthy foods. And this is something that, I think all of us, I know my own situation as a mom has changed over the years regarding sugars and caffeine and pop and all of that, more water, less pop. And so nutrition is very important. Access to preventative care, being able to get the regular checkups, being able to go to the dentist, being able to get eye care and checkups, making sure that on the front end that children are getting the vaccines that they need and the opportunities to prevent things from happening. And then going on, if a child is diagnosed as having asthma or juvenile diabetes or some other issue, making sure that care is available to them. So that whole continuum of care is incredibly important.
Yes. You're so right, and you mentioned a few things that we're very involved in. For one is in Hamtramck, we provide in partnership with the Jewish Fund, immunization for kids who are not citizens yet.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, the Medicaid doesn't kick in for a couple years, so they couldn't go to school without being immunized, so we do that. We're providing eye exams at a new grant at Cristo Rey High School that serves mostly the Hispanic community.
Great.
And if the youngsters need glasses, we're providing funds to help them get glasses. You mentioned that earlier, that if you're not eating, you can't see. It's hard to learn.
Absolutely. Or if you've got a toothache, and
if you have a toothache,
people
yes.
don't realize. I mean, we have had children who lost their lives because of an infected tooth,
right,
and that ended up in infection and disease.
Right.
And so, oral health is very important.
So, thank you for what you do. And in closing, is there anything else you want our listeners to know about Senator Debbie Stabenow now, and what you see really important in the next few months?
Well, I guess I would say we need to have a sense of urgency about providing these things for our children, because our children don't wait. They just keep growing up, whether they can eat or not, whether they have the health care they need or not. They just keep growing.
Right.
And we need to have a sense of urgency about that. So I get tired of just committee meetings and reports, and everybody talks about how important children are. But if we don't act, if we don't make it better, if we don't support families, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
So I have a great sense of urgency about this.
Well, if there's things you want us to do and look at, please let me know.
I will.
We want to be known as the leading children's advocacy organization in the state of Michigan.
I love it.
So thank you very much for
Great to be with
all you do and for being on Caring for Kids. Coming up next, we'll hear from Doug Maibach, Executive Vice President of Barton Mallow Company, when Caring for Kids continues. Here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.
Welcome back, everyone. Larry Burns here at the Grand Hotel at the Chamber Policy Conference 2018. A lot of activity going on, and we were able to find one of our corporate civic leaders, and that's Doug Maibach. Doug is the Executive Vice President of Barton Mallow Companies, and he's also Chairman of the Barton Mallow Enterprises. Doug graduated from Michigan State University. He's a proud Spartan with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and has an MBA from the University of Detroit Mercy. He's an active leader on several committees for the Associated General Contractors of America, chair of its Union Contractors Committee, and is involved with the Construction Users Roundtable. In his spare time, because he's very busy, Doug is also active on many boards, including the Children's Center of Wayne County, and involved in the United Way, Habitat for Humanity, and I know the American Heart Association. So Doug, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the invite.
Yes.
Great to see you again, Larry.
Great to see you, and appreciate your support in many ways of Children's Hospital and now the foundation. And so this wonderful company that's 92 years old, and for our listeners that maybe aren't quite as familiar with how Barton Mallow has evolved, can you tell us a little bit about the company as it is today?
Well, sure. We describe ourselves as a construction services company, and that's pretty broad because what we do is pretty broad. We build.
Right.
And, it's exciting when you build, as our core purpose talks about, building with the American spirit. People, projects, and communities. People will recognize us because of the projects.
Right.
The Little Caesars Arenas or the Children's Hospital expansion, the new tower. And that's good to be known for that. But those other two pillars are really, really important to us. How do we build our people? And so I'm not unusual with the amount of engagement that I have in the community. Many in Barton Mallow are involved that same way because of that third pillar, that we're building communities also. It's so much more than just a project. We're touching lives, and how we do that is so important at Barton Mallow.
Excellent, and we've experienced that. I have in my last year or so, and then prior to that, long time ago, I worked at Smith Henchman and Grill, so I was involved in some of the projects that you did back in it was the 80s. And it's important for people to understand your commitment to the communities. And how about the footprint of your projects? Is that throughout the United States? Give us a little sense of that.
So we're based in Southfield, Michigan.
Right.
We have 17 offices across North America, so from Mexico to Canada and places in between.
Right,
but dominantly on the eastern half of the United States, majority of our projects. And pretty diverse. You can't be in Southeast Michigan without being in the auto industry.
Right,
so we're a big player in the auto industry. Healthcare. Hospitals are another major area, as well as education, K through 12, and the higher ed side. Sports and special events facilities, people definitely recognize us for that. And then one of the more fun things that we've gotten involved in the last few years is the entertainment world, working at the Big Three down in Orlando.
Okay.
Things that you hop on that you never imagine what it takes to build a dream like that.
I can only imagine. And speaking of sports, I saw that Little Caesars Arena was named Arena of the Year in Sports Journal, I think, or one of their marketing journals. And so that was a partnership that I'm sure you're extremely proud of. And that whole district continues to amaze me of how they're in many ways just getting started.
Yeah.
So I think over the next decade or so, people are going to be really pleased with that. So one of the things I'm really pleased to talk to Doug Maibach about from Barton Mallow is the new Children's Hospital of Michigan Tower. And it is occupied. They're working on the lobby. And so can you tell us about the tower and that project and what makes that building special to the kids and the families of the community?
Well, it's a big building, number one. 250,000 square foot is a big building. And it's exciting. As you and I, when we met down at the hospital a few months back and toured around with Luann Thomas out Ewald, it's what happens in that building that is so impressive. The new emergency center, one of the busier ones in the nation.
I think it is the busiest, I think.
Imaging center, so that you've got better diagnostic tools now. The neonatal intensive care center, pediatric intensive care, new operating rooms. As you mentioned, the new front entrance, two-story lobby that's pretty grand. But then, when we walked around with Luann and saw on the pediatric floor the families that are touched, that's why, again, we build what we build.
Right.
And part of the motivation behind the expansion was that when an infant or when a young child, it's a children's hospital, comes in for treatment, they're rarely, if ever, alone. So the family needs to be accommodated. And that's a big part of what we built, was accommodating that, so that they're family-friendly rooms that you can be there with the one that you love that's getting that great care the Children's Hospital provides. So it's exciting. And then children's hospitals are wonderful to build also, just because who are you building for? It's that child that's going through a pretty traumatic event in their lives. How do you build it that's friendly, that's and comforting,
not scary and institutional-like? And decades ago, families were not really all that present in the hospital. But now they are, as you mentioned. And so these rooms that you built are very family-friendly, and parents can sleep there, and they can be there and not be shuffling in beds and stuff. But that is a big part of the evolution, and you've made it so comfortable, and it's something that makes the experience, which is pretty stressful to begin with, less stressful and more you can get through it as a family. So well, really important.
That's a challenging project in that Children's Hospital was there before, existed the entire time that we're building this 250,000 square foot expansion, and we had to do that with those children, with those families, with all of the employees of the hospital being there and working around them. The last thing you want to hear is the sound of a hammer when you're trying to recover from an injury.
But you did it, and once that lobby is done, it's going to even be more special than it ever has been. So we'll have you and Luann back, and we're giving a bunch of tours when it's done. So I look forward to that. So I understand you're on the board of the Children's Center of Wayne County, and so this show's all about kids. And so tell us about the Children's Center of Wayne County.
Well, Children's Center of Wayne County is the largest children's orientated family services organization in the state, and obviously based in Wayne County, and they deal predominantly with mental health issues with children. Many other programs, including autism and others that they deal with, but known more than anything for their mental health. And they're unique in that they don't just look at the child, they look at the family and those around the child when they're providing the care. And they're a neighbor of Children's Hospital, not too far away, and have had shared programs in the past. I got involved there over 20 years ago just by a call saying, hey, we're going to be building something new. Would you be interested in joining our Building and Grounds committee?
Yep.
And, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not unique in Barton Mallow, so when those calls come, you say
guys
yes.
Listen. Yeah, you'd say yes.
And through that engagement, helping them build a new center, I ultimately became the chair of that Building and Grounds committee.
Makes sense.
Then thereafter was asked to join their board of directors and ultimately became the president of that board. Today I'm now just back to being a good board member, helping in every way I can, but look more forward. I'm on their strategic planning and governance committee, and how do we do things again, and then what's changing in our world and how do we anticipate that change?
Well, as we are evolving, as you know, because of the for-profit status of the hospital, we're now a separate entity, and we are branding ourselves as such, but even more importantly, we started to grant funds beyond the hospital. They're still the major recipient of our funding, but one of our focus areas is mental health. So we just had a grant cycle, and we are providing well over $1 million into the community for things like mental health throughout the community. And so I'd love to connect even more with the Children's Center of Wayne County. So I want to
Glad to help you do that.
Yeah, so I make sure we follow up on that. And you mentioned the family, and it's all about the environment and the family and then the kids. So I totally understand that as well. And you're involved with the United Way. I started my career at the United Way, so it's close to my heart. Habitat for Humanity, and it just goes on and on about what you do as well as the rest of your colleagues at Barton Mallow. And so the community needs to know that and appreciate that. You were a major sponsor of our second annual Derby for Kids, which was a great event. We held it at the Country Club of Detroit. We raised over $120,000, and the grant is going to be for combined research at Wayne State University, Children's Hospital of Michigan, Mott Children's Hospital, and the University of Michigan. So thank you. And I do hear stories that one of the challenges that companies like yours might have with the great resurgence of Detroit is finding enough people to help you build things.
That's very true.
And I do think, I was in higher ed for 27 years, and I do think that community colleges and colleges that you mentioned are now perceived differently. These are nice career paths that people can take that don't necessarily need to go to a 4-year university to have a fulfilling career and path. So I think we're on the right road for that as well.
I'm certainly hoping so.
Well, thank you very much for your support of the foundation, of doing great work at the hospital and your partnership, and we look forward to more to come in the years ahead.
I'm excited to continue that journey.
Thank you. That was Doug Maibach, Executive Vice President of Barton Mallow Company. We'll hear next from Donna Murray Brown, President and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, when our Caring for Kids continues right here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR. Presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation. Once again, here's Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everyone, here on the island. It's a beautiful day. And with me now is Donna Murray Brown. Donna is President and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. She leads the strategic direction and overall daily operations of the association's initiatives and programs. And prior to be named President and CEO, Donna served at the Michigan Nonprofit Association as Director of the Metro Detroit Partnership Office and Senior Director of Capacity Building. In this role, she led a successful strategic alliance programming for arts and cultural organizations in Metro Detroit, while also leading the merger negotiations of 4 organizations, that is not easy, to create the Belle Isle Park Conservancy. That's a lot. Ms. Murray Brown serves on the Board of Directors of the National Council of Nonprofits, Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees for Detroit Public Television, which is a partner of ours as well, Board of Directors for Michigan Associations of United Ways, partner of ours, and is a state commissioner for the Michigan Office of Services to the Aging. Wow. That alone could be the whole, time for the interview, but we're not going to let that happen. So Donna, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Well, thank you.
We spent some time in Washington.
We did.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what we were advocating for. But first, for listeners who aren't familiar with the Michigan Nonprofit Association, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, Michigan Nonprofit Association, we say M&A. M&A is a statewide membership organization that serves nonprofits. And so you might want to think of us as a nonprofit serving nonprofits. We provide resources and tools and advocacy to really create a strong operating environment for social impact organizations to do the great work that they do every day. And
how big is your membership? Just generally?
Sure. So we have over 1,000 members that are a part of us. And then, that is made up of community-based organizations to very large organizations that have a 501c3 status. But we also welcome those that serve the sector as well as part of our membership.
So before I forget, if somebody is listening and their organization is not a member, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Actually, going to our website at www.mnaonline.org.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we'll put that on our website as well. And we're talking with Donna Murray Brown, who's president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. And so one of the ways the Michigan Nonprofit Association serves is through civic engagement, as you talked about. Many of the nonprofit organizations in Michigan rely on federal funding, much of which is passed on based on population, which is why we were in Washington, and explain why all of this is important, particularly now, to have an accurate census count and the challenges that go toward getting there. And I know we talked about that a lot in D.C.
Sure. So yes, we are in 2018, and we're talking about a 2020 census. We've got some lead time, and if we had our druthers, we probably would have started even 3 years earlier than now. So it's important to have a complete count because the state of Michigan's budget, really 40% of that is represented by federal dollars.
Right. 40%.
40%. So that's a large chunk.
Not small.
It's a large chunk. The other piece of it is with that, it is predicated on the number of people that are in the state of Michigan. So when you think of it purely from an economic perspective, having the number of people, an accurate count of the number of people, really determines how much federal funding that we're going to get for programs like Medicaid, for programs that support children, for affordable housing programs that are needed to really create strength in our communities, especially those that are most vulnerable. The other thing is that we stand to lose if we're not getting an accurate count, just like we did in 2010, a congressional seat. So representation for the state of Michigan can be harmed by that in terms of reduction. So we want to make sure that we keep what we have, increase if we can. That would even be better.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the challenges that the average listener might not be aware of, particularly in a city like Detroit, that trying to get an accurate count of the people that are there? And then a follow-up question on what we can do to help you, help us, in essence.
Right. So I think one of the things I'm finding really since we've been doing this work is that people don't necessarily understand the census. So really explaining to the average person that this is the first way that you can actually be a part of civil society. Voting is important, but the very first thing in the Constitution talks about you being counted and how important that is. And so just recognizing that they can contribute by being counted is important for them to know. Particularly in the city of Detroit, there are lots of barriers to not just the understanding the census, but recognizing that it is safe to be able to participate in the census. So there's this fear of how will the information be handled as well. Could it be hacked? And this is something we want to be able to mitigate, that information that's collected is completely private, completely confidential, and not able to be hacked. And so we want to be able to mitigate some of those fears around that as well.
And how can companies or people help?
So lots of ways. One of the things I wanted to share with you in particular is that one of the communities that's not counted are children, and people often don't recognize that children. So just recognizing that counting everyone, including our children, is important to make sure that we can have programs that actually help children to grow and to thrive and to be successful. So I think if we're looking for help from people is to really build the awareness around the importance of completing the census. We know that this is a moment in time that happens every 10 years, but by golly, the implications of not getting it right last for 10 years.
Yeah.
So
and
building
really,
awareness is key.
Yeah, bringing it back to 40% of the state of Michigan's budget is from the federal government, and this is impacting that. So count on us to help in any way we can.
Thank you.
Particularly in the area of making sure that children are counted.
Absolutely.
Because children benefit or don't based upon funding and things like that. So that's what really struck me as important for us as a sort of a community foundation for children. So we will do that.
Thank you.
We're talking with Donna Murray Brown, President and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. And in your previous role, you led a program for arts and culture and organizations in our Metro Detroit. And talk a little bit about the importance of those two areas in the communities that you serve.
So sure. So just to set some context, this was back in 2009, and this was a time when arts and culture were feeling really some strain around resources. There were lack of resources that were provided to those organizations, and they were trying to figure out not necessarily how can they just stay alive, but how can they stay alive and thrive in the future. And so part of the work that we were doing is thinking about how strategic alliances, if they were to work together, how could that increase revenue and decrease expenses? So it's really focused in on building collaborations through strategic alliances for a very strong purpose that would help them actually again, thrive in their work. So it was a 3-year project. It was funded by two major funders in our community to the tune of $2 million. And it really was, I like to say, a demonstration project, if you will, to say, how can people work together? How could organizations work together to really achieve success? And in some cases, in many cases, they were successful. In some other cases, what was successful about it is that they realized this wasn't the right collaboration necessarily for them. So
that in itself was useful.
Yes.
Well, that in some ways is what we're trying to do as well, is to be not only a leading advocate for children, but also through funding and other advocacy to bring organizations together. We have found, Dave Coulter, who works with me on external affairs, that when we bring groups together that are providing services for children, many times they don't know of one another. And when we bring them in a room, they many times start talking about how they might collaborate. And so the fact that you did that I commend you, and I may have to pick your brain on some of the things that worked for you. Just talking about things, as you mentioned, sometimes proves to be the biggest step in doing stuff together, or maybe it's just not the right group to do things together.
Exactly.
So what else do you want our listeners to know about your organization? If there's anything else, give you the opportunity.
Sure. So one of the things I noticed actually here, being here at Mackinac Island today, is the prominence that the social impact sector has had in terms of sessions and speakers here at the conference, and recognizing that it is both the private sector, the independent sector, the social impact sector, and the public sector working together to create a strong Michigan. So it's really nice to be here to see all the contributions of every sector here in Michigan represented and working together about how we can be stronger and be a better Michigan. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, that kind of summarizes Mackinac and the conference, and it's great. It's something. It's my second year. I was in Ohio for a long time, and I'm so glad to be back in Michigan, and proud to be part of this conference as well. So I look forward to working with you on the census.
Yes.
And other things as the days and years come ahead. So Donna Murray Brown, thank you very much for being on Caring for Kids.
Thank you.
That was President and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, Donna Murray Brown. Stay tuned as we dive into some current news and upcoming events from our foundation when Caring for Kids continues right here on News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everyone. That was a great show on Mackinac Island. A few updates from our Children's Hospital Michigan Foundation. I wanted to let everyone know, if you didn't hear, recently in the Fisher Building, in the beautiful lobby of the Fisher Building, we announced 14 new community-based programs that our foundation is funding to the likes of the Boys and Girls Club, the Jewish Federation, Beaumont Health System, the Children's Hospital Michigan, of course, and many others. And so it is really a major step forward in our path to becoming a true community foundation for children. And so we're very, very excited about that. And on the fundraising side, we have a big event coming up on July 13th, our Great Leaders for Kids event, which is known as Summer Recess. It's going to be from 7 to midnight at the Waterview Loft on the Detroit River, right next to the Renaissance Center. So it's a great venue, particularly on July 13th. And all of the proceeds from this event support our foundation and the programs that we support throughout the course of the year. Another very fun event that's going to take place in August. That's August 29th in Grosse Pointe Farms on the Hill, as they call it. And that's Racing for Kids. That's an organization that recently we interviewed Pat Wright and Robbie Buell. They're still going very strong, helping kids throughout the country. This event is for supporting kids right here in southeastern Michigan. Racing for Kids, August 29th in Grosse Pointe Farms. So thanks for listening to Caring for Kids, this special episode that we recorded on Mackinac Island. We're proud to sponsor this program. We hope you follow us on Twitter and Facebook, because we really send out a lot of messages of the great programs we're supporting, and that's at CFK Radio Show for, is that for Caring for Kids? Okay, I'm going to forget that. So follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and you'll find out a lot of information about the things that we're doing, and hopefully you'll tune in again on Tuesday, July 24th at 7 p.m. for the next version of Caring for Kids. So thank you indeed.
Caring for Kids on WJR has been presented by the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation.